All right, the next technical element or technique that I'd like to show you guys is automating effects. And again, this technique is a bit more advanced, but I want to expose you to it. It's not something that's required in your projects, but those of you who are ready, take it and go. It's just teaching you how to do something. Now, the vision to do that will come in time. I'm going to make one instrument track, and I'm just going to call this loop. And this is a throwaway, so we just make something. I'm going to insert, expand, and I'm actually going to insert a loop to keep things very, very simple. And I'm going to pick 009, the pop hop groove. Pop hop. I'm going to open up the MIDI editor. I'm going to choose my pencil tool, and I'm going to draw in on C3. I'm going to draw in 12 measures. So I'm going to have one long line that's going all the way through 12 up to 13. Okay. And as described, this is a loop. Okay. We're going to duplicate this track. So track and duplicate, because we're going to do two things with it. One a little bit more complex than the other. So first we're just going to concentrate on this track. Now remember, your automation lane is, you get to it through this triangle here, this drop down, and it always starts with velocity on your instrument tracks, and you have your audio volume, etc., etc. Now, what's interesting about Pro Tools First, again, different than Pro Tools, is that the default is whenever you insert anything, you have access to all of the various elements that can be technically automated. Let's keep it simple-ish for now. Underneath the expand, we're going to insert an EQ called the EQ3 7-band EQ. Now, EQ is kind of, it is frequency and amplitude-based sculpting of sounds, essentially. I always ask the question, hey, do you drive, or do you play with the bass or treble in the car, on the car stereo? That is basically EQ. This is a much more complex version of it, but that doesn't really matter for what we're doing. We're going to click on auto, because in the full version of Pro Tools, interestingly enough, what you end up with is a menu of things that you can automate, and then you choose one and bring it over to this list. This is the opposite in Pro Tools First, where you have that entire list ready to go. That could complicate things, but it's all right, we'll live. So I'm just showing you that. When you click on velocity, you'll now see that the EQ 7-band is available, and we are going to choose the master bypass. And master bypass is simply this button right here. It's an on-off switch, basically. And what we're going to do is we're going to automate that on-off switch. So before we do that, let's click on factory default here. And I want everyone to put in a special effect called Telephone 1. And what that does is it cuts all, for those of you who may be somewhat familiar with the concept of equalization, on our x-axis we have frequency. And this particular EQ curve has cut everything very sharply below 500 hertz and everything above 5,000 hertz or 5 kilohertz. While boosting this small mid-range window, essentially bandwidth. And it makes the track sound like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to automate that to go on and off. And how do we do that? We're going to click on velocity, and we're going to choose EQ 7-band. We're going to choose master bypass. And now this line represents this button. And it's a little bit confusing to think of that way, but that's what it is. And also a little less intuitive is when the bypass is on, the effect is off, right? So what we're going to do is use our grabber tool, let's zoom in just a little bit. We're going to go to measure 5, click once to create what's called an anchor point, and just to the left of it, I'm going to click and drag this line all the way to the beginning up. So what that is doing is essentially turning off the effect until it gets to measure 5. It's going to turn it on. I want it to go for 4 measures, and then we're going to turn it off, or turn the effect off by turning the bypass on again. All right, that's the intuitive issue. And what this is going to do right away, I didn't need to do that, is play the full fidelity loop for 4 measures. It's going to turn off this very aggressive EQ curve for 4 measures, and it's going to go back to the full fidelity. Let's listen to it. Okay, and if you're in grid mode, you have hit that perfectly on the downbeat and everything's clever. Okay, and that's basically it. I want you to export this and submit it and show me that you have done that. Now, I also want to show you a slightly more interesting use of this, I'll say. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to listen to this version of it. And this is just a duplicate of it, right? We did that together. I'm going to insert the EQ again. This time, I'm going to turn on what's called a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter. So we want to put both of these in. We're going to raise how steep our curve is here. You can see it here. If I change that, you can kind of see how we have a steeper curve. And what we're going to do is we're going to automate the 2 frequencies here. We're going to bring this one down, the high frequency, all the way down, and then we're going to raise these both up together in an automated fashion. So again, we're going to drop down our automation lane. We're going to go to the EQ7 band, and we are going to put in the high pass frequency, and we're going to hit the plus sign here, and we're going to go in there again and going to go down to the bottom and find the low pass frequency. This time, when we get to measure 5, we're going to put anchor points in. We're going to raise this until it gets at measure 9. We're going to raise it all the way up. And then let's add another thing here, and we're going to add the master bypass. And what we're going to do is, similarly to this first one, is we're going to turn the bypass on so that we only hear this effect during the same 4-measure break. Now, what I want to do is show you what this looks like when it gets there, okay? Because this one moves. It's kind of a sweep filter of sorts. So here we go. And off. Okay, now again, every knob on here is automatable. Every knob and expand is automatable, including the cutoff, for example. In any case, that is effect automation.